Welcome to Taiwan Report News Brief, news analysis and context from Taichung, Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. All right, now the previous headline section is now its own show, with this show focused on bigger stories in Taiwan politics and foreign affairs, as well as soft power and economic news that impacts both of those subjects. Stories are sourced from both English and Chinese language sources. Now, up today on the show, we have some polling showing some interesting results that bear watching, and the KMT's Racto-pork Circus rolls on. Some new polls have come out, and some of the results raise some flags on things that bear watching. Up first is a DPP poll, which may or may not be a bit biased. In it, about 61% were satisfied with President Tsai's overall performance this year, while 36.6% were not. That sounds fairly plausible considering Taiwan's stellar handling of the pandemic, and that both numbers are not too far off the results of the election in January. Reading from Taiwan News' translation, public satisfaction with President Tsai's diplomacy, cross-strait policy, and national defense efforts this year was at 56.6%, 55.5%, and 59.1%, respectively. That also sounds about right, as our policies in those areas are basically mainstream politically. Interestingly, they also asked an open-ended question about the reasons for satisfaction or dissatisfaction. On the main reasons for discontentment, 7.7% referred to Tsai's loosening restrictions on imported U.S. beef and pork products containing ractopamine. 7.4% were concerned about the economy. 4.1% were worried about the nation's image. 3.5% were anxious about the current state of cross-strait relations, and 2.4% were dissatisfied with the closure of pro-China CTI News. They got that incorrect. Actually, the license was not renewed. But anyway, this is interesting because the two issues that the KMT have been pushing hard on, ractopamine and the non-renewal of CTI's license, both, when directly polled, show majority support for the KMT position. However, this poll shows that while they may side with the KMT's stances, overall, neither issue is much of a big deal for most people. Worse for the KMT, 31.6% identified with the DPP and only 16.2% with the KMT, which is in line with most recent polling. Moving over to a poll by TVBS on the Big Six municipality mayors on the eve of the midpoint of most of their terms. In terms of satisfaction, the top two are no surprise. New Taipei's Ho of the KMT and Taoyuan's Zheng of the DPP came in at 77% and 69%. Tainan's DPP Mayor Huang came in third at a respectable 58%. Fourth place finisher Lu Xiuyan, the KMT mayor of Taichung, was a surprise. She had 56% approval, a whopping 23% jump from a year ago. There have been some indications her support has been rising, but I want to keep an eye out on this to see if this is an outlier. As well as on fifth place finisher Kaohsiung's DPP mayor Chen Chi-mai, who only got 44%. Chen, who has only been in office a few months, won office handily a few months ago following the recall of Dan Hangguoyu in June. This suggests a pretty big slide for him in popularity. But wait, it gets worse for Chen. He came in 3 percentage points lower than Han did last year at the same poll. He's clearly got his work cut out for him if this poll is accurate. Coming in last was Taipei Mayor Ke Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party at a miserable 35%. Now, interestingly, compared to a recent ET Today poll on the top 10 politicians nationally versus this poll of city residents, Ke is more popular nationally by about 10 percentage points, while Chen is less popular on the national stage by about 5 points. Ke is actually up in that national poll, coming in as the sixth most popular in the country. So it appears that the disillusionment with him felt in Taipei hasn't reached further south. Also interesting is that Taichung's Lu didn't make that top 10 list, but Kaohsiung's Chen did, coming in at number 9. To round out this segment, I found a nifty little tracker of the top 50 politicians in the country that tracks them by the number of comments on social media over the last week. It also categorizes them as positive, neutral, and negative comments. Unsurprisingly, the president topped the list with a total of over 145,000 posts. But interestingly, over the last week, number 2 was Lu Xiaoyan with over 77,000 comments. That is probably due to the Taichung MRT fiasco, a local sex scandal involving her head of the Labor Department, and her run-in with AIT, which I'll get into later in the show. The KMT Circus show on the upcoming of the lifting of the ban on pork and more beef containing traces of the leanness-enhancing agent ractopamine imported from the U.S. just keeps on rolling. To recap, the president announced plans to lift the ban, which has for years been a key sticking point in trade negotiations with the United States. She and the DPP were firmly against this when the KMT was in power, and they tried to lift the ban under President Ma. And the DPP successfully blocked Ma from lifting the ban on pork, though he did succeed in getting some beef products allowed in. Now, the two parties have switched positions. So far, the KMT has disrupted the legislature for months, including throwing pig guts at DPP lawmakers, had a big protest featuring lots of pig props, tried legislative proposals, and one former KMT lawmaker even launched a hunger strike. Late last week, was reportedly supposed to be a closed-door meeting between Taichung Mayor Lu Xiaoyan and AIT Director Brent Christensen. The doors were open to the press, and it was turned into a public meeting. That the DPP characterized as an ambush. Naturally, Lu then proceeded to berate Christensen over the Racto-pork issue. The KMT defended the move, showing, for example, then DPP Mayor of Kaohsiung Chen Zhu on stage criticizing the issue with the then AIT director, though it wasn't intended as a closed-door event. A spokesperson for the Executive Yuan said Lu's move demonstrated a lack of respect and could result in global mistrust of Taiwan. AIT spokesperson Amanda Mansour said in a statement, quote, when political figures propagate disinformation and raise unfounded anxiety among Taiwan consumers, it is a disservice to everyone. Mayor Lu responded that AIT's commentary on the issue should be given due respect, but it was her duty to safeguard residents' safety. A small group of protesters also gathered at AIT in Taipei, armed with an amusing sign with the slogan, "No rack, be happy." In the legislature, KMT Chair Johnny Chang said the DPP is still going to use the, quote, tyranny of the majority to crush public opinion, he said, adding that what the DPP would be crushing is the health of the public as well as that of future generations. AIT noted that in the U.S., people have been eating the meat for years with no signs of ill effects. Now, the whole saga took another weird turn when a clinical psychiatrist who is under investigation after the Ministry of Health and Welfare filed a formal complaint against him with the police for spreading misinformation, became a cause célèbre for the KMT. He had said things like ractopamine causes autism and that it is 250 times more toxic than the drug ecstasy. Makes it sound fun. The KMT made some headway in getting a referendum question on the ballot by passing the first signature drive and can move on to the second stage signature drive. The question reads, quote, do you agree the government should comprehensively prohibit the imports of pork, offal, or other related products that contain the B-agonist ractopamine, beta-agonist, my apologies. The DPP is set this week to vote through the provisions to allow the imports, which are set to begin on January 1st. That led to a Taipei Times headline that probably has never been written in the history of journalism. U.S. imports. Do not throw entrails at pork debate, Speaker pleads. The KMT and its supporters plan to parade around the Legislative Yuan complex every hour from 9 a.m. on Thursday in protest. They're also planning to put a large screen outside to broadcast the voting. Taipei City Councilor and head of the KMT Party School Institute of Revolutionary Practice, Luo Zhiqiang, has announced plans to launch recall campaigns against 12 lawmakers who support lifting the ban. Likely, this circus will continue to roll on into early next year as local KMT-led local governments do battle to block the imports in their jurisdiction. Eventually, they will be overruled, however. So, what is all this political theater for? The problem for the KMT is a lack of issues to attack the DPP on. Most of President Tsai's policies are fairly popular, leaving little to attack there. The other problem is that in Taiwan, most policies come out of the technocratic elites and the bureaucracy, and many of the current administration's initiatives are actually rebranded initiatives from the Ma administration, who in turn rebranded initiatives from the Chen administration, and so on. Food safety is a safe issue in that it is popular with the public and doesn't touch on sensitive issues regarding sovereignty and national identity. President Tsai knew full well what the KMT was going to do, as after all, she and her party did the same, and she's using her political capital to see it through now, presumably hoping that the next election cycle in 2022, it will be long forgotten. All right, that's our program. Be sure to hit like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And of course, if you can, please support us as a patron on Patreon. Your support really does mean a lot to us.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
还有就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。